surviving the cycle of loss and grief. We all have within our daily lives moments where we're experiencing loss and unfortunately at times grief over it could be a death, loss of a pet, or maybe, you know, our family situation has changed. And so I wanted to bring together some other women that throughout my life have sort of been there for me and able to have dialogues that help us to integrate when we're having change and we're transitioning, whether it is our family structure because we've lost a loved one, or whether it is perhaps we've lost our home and our house is in foreclosure, or maybe we're just having to change jobs. Maybe we've had downsizes in jobs. But one of the important things that I love and I experience is having open dialogues on how do you survive through these times. So I brought together Shirley Sypert, who is an author, and she's actually a TV producer of Polio and Me. And I also brought together Peake, who has had so many different journeys, and not only loss medical-wise, but family-wise. And, you know, it's these open dialogues that I think are important that for society that, you know, the more we can talk openly instead of hiding in the dark what our true human experiences are, that we can integrate. And so I really want to thank you folks for being here. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
You know, I know this was sort of impromptu, and but sometimes that's what it is that you meet someone and there might be something in their life that you can help them with by sharing your experience.
Sure.
And you folks are really good at that. And that's why I sort of thought, it's a no-brainer. Let's get together and talk about this. So, Shirley, you've had a lot of different things, and one of the things is your miracle. You've overcome post-polio.
Post-polio syndrome, that's right. I've been blessed in my life to realize that, even as a child, to realize that one can rise above a life situation, and it has a lot to do with your attitude and good groundwork, you know, a good foundation, a solid foundation. Fortunately for me, my father was a minister, but he taught me as a child, when people say things about you or do things to hurt you, or if there's trouble situations, let it be. Peace, be still, and don't take it personally, because when people are speaking, it's really a reflection on their character. It's not about you. And that was the most enlightening and wonderful thoughts that he could have planted in my spirit, because I was always forgiving when people were mistreating me, and you know, and I guess I didn't even think of it as mistreating. I was just wondering, why were they doing it? Because I think of myself as a good person as a child, even so. I just was able to bless it and say, well, and I would tell them, I said, well, all I know is that if you were in my place, I would not treat you this way. That's what I was able to tell them. And they would just continue to taunt and whatever. But it was, what the meaningful part for me now as an adult is to look back, there are no scars on my spirit, because I didn't hold on to those troubled times. I didn't consider it part of my life existence that I had to dwell on.
You didn't grieve, even though you had a disability like polio. You didn't sit and grieve over the way society viewed you, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I didn't have, well, I'm sure there were times, I know of one, for instance, that there was a girl who was, we used to call her Mean Charlene, because we couldn't wait until after school. I thought it was just me that she targeted, but it was a couple of years ago. I was speaking to my sister. It was like, what, how many years? 40 years later. She says, oh, Charlene was just so mean to me all the time. But, you know, I have to bless that child's spirit, because she died an awful death. And during the times like when she would, you know how sometimes you wish you were not around that person, or you wish you didn't have to be in that circumstance. And there were times when I thought that, you know, and I just, but when she passed away and the way she died, I was so shocked. And I thought, oh my gosh, I hope I didn't have anything to do with that, because there are times I just really did not want to have to see her after school and things like that. but then one person says, "You're not that powerful. You couldn't have caused that." I said, "Oh, thank you. It's such a relief." I used to go, I just wish she was not in my life when I have to try to go home, because she and her friends would chase me and kick dirt on me, and this, it was just the worst time of my life. I guess when I think about it, it was like, oh, but if I kept up with my brothers and sisters, then I got there. But polio set in, and it when I was 10 months of age. So for 14 years, I had that affliction. But then doctors worked miraculous operations on my feet so that I could walk like everyone else. And then it was later on in the last 15 years of my life when post-polio, the late effects of polio set in, where my feet actually went back to the original deformity. The right foot was shorter than the left, the leg was, and I was walking on the toes of the right foot, and the left foot was just dragging along. It was there for comfort, but there was no comfort, and both feet were, so there was a lot of pain.
And for you, that must have been hard, because at one point you were actually able to do modeling. And so how did you deal with that loss of this perfect body, and so many people, so many young people, and you used this phrase, you said people are killing themselves
dying
for
to
beauty.
Be beautiful. Dying to be beautiful.
So how did you deal with that loss of a physical appearance?
Well, that was difficult, but it's only as hard as you want it to be, is the way I said it. And there were so many people who would say, "Oh, life is so hard, isn't it, Shirley? Oh, if I was you, I'd just give up," one lady said once. And I said, "Gee, I've never thought of that." Gee, wow. I've never thought of that. Thanks a lot for your encouragement. But, there's a phrase that from James Allen's book that says, in order to perfect your body, guard your mind. And in order to renew your body, beautify your mind. So I think, based on the thoughts and the foundation that I was given early, that I was able to transcend through all of these transitions in my life. I looked at it with a joyful heart, as if, okay, there is a plan for me. There is a reason for this. I've had such a beautiful life. Why should I sit around and go, "Oh, my life is dismal"? It's not. The road and this path, even though there have been trials along the way, there's just so many other. So, the balance is way off the scale when it comes to the blessings that my life, that have come my way. So, and just having life itself and being able to wake and honor the day with a smile, to me, that's where it all starts.
To say, I'm breathing again.
Yeah.
I'm still alive and breathing,
And what
I think that's a lot. Every
Yeah.
morning I wake up and go, I'm still breathing. So,
Right.
and I think that's a lot to acknowledge.
And you open your spirit to, how can I help somebody else? I think when we reach that point of knowing that each of us individually is an outreach person, you have something that you can share.
When it's not all about me.
That's absolutely right. There you go. Exactly.
Terri, I wanted you to share a little bit, if you're comfortable.
Sure.
You'd said the phrase, killing yourself to be beautiful. Can you talk a little bit about, because you actually had a loss. You gained and then you lost.
Well, my experience has been, most of my life I've dealt with loss. I dealt with loss before I was born. My family situation had a lot of loss, dealing with suicides and whatnot on my mother's side of the family. And so it was something that I knew as a small child, was told about. So there was mental illness in my family. And that mental illness was something that we didn't talk about.
And so then you're thinking you're the only one in the neighborhood with
Absolutely,
these problems.
Absolutely. And my role in the family was the nurturer. I became a nurturer at 5 years old. My mother was, back during those days in the 60s, they didn't have the same kind of support groups that they have now. Psychiatry was a lot different.
And things weren't open.
No, things weren't
People
open.
People weren't having open dialogue.
And they didn't know what people had. Their diagnoses were different, and so they would just medicate them a lot of times. And so my mother wasn't able to take care of us. So me being the female, I took the role on as nurturer at 5 years old. And don't really ever remember being a child. So I had a very serious life.
So a loss of your
loss
childhood
of my
identity.
Absolutely. And what happens is I think you get into a cycle of loss.
Well, you said it was almost like your family had a chronic cycle.
There was a chronic
of loss and grief.
There was a chronic cycle. My mother's brother committed suicide when he was 16 years old, and in their home, and the family didn't cope well, and the father then killed himself a week later. Which, as you can imagine, losing 2 family members like that in a week took its toll on them, and the depression was obviously immense for them. They tried to carry on. My family has been survivors, as well as dealing with loss and grief. But then it did perpetuate into the next generation. My mother took her life at 41, and my younger brother also.
And that's why I really commend you for being so courageous to talk openly about this.
It's difficult.
Like you said, you're a professional survivor.
It's difficult, and I'll tell you, even though I myself have never wanted to kill myself, when you have that many suicides in your family, and you tell anybody, they immediately think that you need to be in the white jacket and take you away.
Well, they don't want to talk.
They don't want to talk about it. They're afraid
this is
of
too
you.
dangerous and volatile. And
depending on the culture that you're in, there's superstition involved with some kind of things like that. You think there's a curse or whatnot. I don't believe in any of that.
Well, you had also said, and I don't mean to interrupt, but you said an important statement that, maybe having these kind of dialogues, because when we do shut down and we don't want to talk, is that what's creating some of that expression where you're seeing, unfortunately, again today, another mass shooting or killing? I'm not sure exactly, but there was something, unfortunately, up in the mainland where they've had another incident. I think it was near Milwaukee.
And this is what happens, and I mean, I know from experience being in that situation, you try to get your loved one help. I know as a child, I would come home from school and not know what I would find. My mother was always trying to take her life, and so I would have to...
And that build-up when they're not able to express, and you think you got to be perfect, but what is perfect?
And the thing is when you're in that environment, this is in the 70s, I would have to call an ambulance, of course, and the ambulance would come, and then you'd get to the hospital and say, oh, not you again, and...
Things are taken lightly.
Taken so lightly, and oh, we can't take her here, and they would pretty much stitch her up and send her back out the door with me, a child. Things have changed, thank goodness, since then.
Yes.
But you do learn to cope with that, and you obviously become a survivor. But there are hidden things that are passed down to the next generation that you don't even realize.
And you said you're hoping that by bringing this to the forefront to stop some of that cycling.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because when you discuss suicide in your family as well, there are certain people that hear that and they think maybe that is the way out, and it's never the way out. It's never the way out. And you have to put one foot in front of the other, no matter how bad things are. No matter it's not how many times you fall down, but it's how many times you get back up. And you should never be ashamed of your circumstances.
Yes, especially because we all have frailties, and we're real humans, and I think that's what we forget is we're all trying to be so put on that perfect appearance, that everything's so great in my life. It's okay to have problems in your life.
And
it's
ask for help.
okay that maybe you're homeless and maybe you don't have the perfect situation.
And to ask for help. It's very difficult to ask for help because people are embarrassed to ask for help. And sometimes when you ask for help, you get turned down. That's okay. But I'm a Christian, and I also believe that we're supposed to take care of each other. We're supposed to nurture the earth, we're supposed to nurture ourselves, and we're supposed to nurture each other and love one another. And it really does, you have to forgive those who've hurt us and move past that.
Well, I think when you accept people for where they are in their situation, when you allow them to, yes, I have this going on, and talk about it instead of saying, oh, that's embarrassing, we can't talk here. I've actually experienced that, unfortunately, in my own family where I was needing shelter and to stay in a shelter, and some of my family members didn't want to hear that. And I thought, that's unfortunate for you because there might be a time when you can need to reach out and let the community help you. And if you can't even start to have that dialogue,
Right.
then how are you going to allow yourself to get the help that you might need?
Right.
And so that's why I think it's important.
They didn't appreciate that you had that available to you. My gosh,
Right.
you know, and if
it
they
was
weren't
embarrassing.
extending,
Let's
if they
don't
weren't
talk about
extending
that.
it, yeah.
Let's don't. we don't want any.
Right.
That's the way people are. But could I share that?
Sure.
You were talking about the mass shooting today, but years ago, when the Columbine one, I think was like the first major mass shooting that drew attention. I wrote a song called "Ruler of My Existence," and the words are, "I am the ruler of my existence. The choices I make say a lot about me. My clothes, hair, and speech make a definite statement to everyone that I meet. I'm learning it takes common sense to change my point of view, and the world can be a better place if success depends on me and you. In my hands lies dignity, a future, a dream. In my soul are the things that life has given to me. In my mind, I allow myself to be free of all of the negatives lurking at me, because I am the ruler of my existence." And I think that song helped me to, and I think that was the beginning of the onset of the post-polio condition too, and I just realized these words are very meaningful. They're good for the time, you know, for what we're going through at that time, and it's also good for the healing of the spirit. Wanting our young people and our nation to know too that they can make good choices. Choosing to make negative choices, just like family members in your body. I think it's admirable, though, that you have survived and you can sit here and talk about this. It's as if you've watched a stage play happening around you, and you're the living person. My dad used to always say...
That's how it feels, too.
Yeah, my dad used to say there'll always be one person left to tell the story. Which is prophetic in many ways, you know, that no matter how things transpire in life, there'll be somebody, even if it's the hieroglyphics on the wall, somebody left the story there. You look at it and you know something has happened. So you have a book waiting to be written, don't you?
Yes, I do. I survived implant sickness as well.
Wow.
I was sick from implants that I had in the 80s, and I'm working on writing a book myself called Dying to be Beautiful, and it's for younger people that think that, you know, it's all about being beautiful, and they'll do anything to get there. And I actually, you know, was in a magazine and was paid money to have the breast implants. I was always a large-breasted woman, but I had naturally, you know, from the weight, they dropped a little bit. And so I was actually advanced the money to do that. Nice. And being 25 years old, wanted to be in a magazine, thought, wow, this is, you know, I'm going to be a movie star and all of these things that a lot of young girls think. And 20 years later, I became very sick from them. Had to have them removed. And that's a larger story for another day. But I'm a survivor of that as well. And
We'll have the courage to have them removed.
Oh my goodness! Let me tell you, the doctors at the time, the cosmetic surgeons, a lot of them, you know, there's a lot of them that will put them in, but there's not a lot that will take them out.
Because they don't want the liability, right?
They don't want the liability. They don't want to believe that there are women sick from this. And that, you know, when you go for consultations to have them removed, they'll tell you, well, you're going to be concave, you're going to be completely scarred, you're not going to have any breasts left. And I knew that I was very sick. It had spread through my blood system, and had a lot of neurological problems. I thought I was developing Alzheimer's. I couldn't even remember what red, yellow, green meant when driving.
Wow.
That's how bad it was. I did finally have the courage to have them removed. My own breast tissue did grow back.
Wonderful.
And my message is that really do your research when you want to do something, and be comfortable with yourself.
Well, a lot of people, it's moved from wanting the breast done to the butt.
Yeah.
It's
So, I
amazing.
mean, they're still...
And those products are foreign products that they're using to make those things happen. That is not natural. It is man-made materials, and we have to be real careful with using man-made materials, because, you know, the chemical makeup of silicone and even hip implants and whatnot is the chemicals that they use to put in there are frightening.
Well, you had said you thought you were getting saline implants, and then
I was
it
told
later.
that's right. I was told they were saline implants. They lasted a lifetime. that it would be the same as an IV bag. If anything happened, you would just leak salt water into your body. But what they don't tell you is that you can also grow fungus. Mold can grow in there. There's a lot of difficulties. The bag itself that holds the saline is made from silicone, so they're all silicone. And it's a big secret. You know, it really still is a big secret. There's a lot of women, Sally Kirkland and different women in the industry, in the television and film industry, that have come forward. And it has been brought up in front of the FDA, of course, and Congress. And they've made some changes. They've made some positive changes, but they still deny that women are sick and getting sick from them. So, yeah, it's been a long road. You just put one foot in front of the other, and you try to hopefully inspire somebody else and maybe give them a little help along the way. If we all just help one person every day, what a better place we'd be in.
Absolutely.
And share your experiences. Don't be afraid to share your experiences. We all have them.
I think that's a really important way of how to break the cycle. I saw a movie recently, Looper. I don't know if you've had a chance to see that. Bruce Willis, I love him anyhow. But the storyline is excellent. I don't particularly wasn't fond of the way this one gentleman broke the cycle, but I think that we have the power to do that, whether it's to step away from it, turn our back on it, whatever it is.
And what was the genre? What was the cycle he broke?
That someone hired to be an exterminator, to take out somebody every 30 years. This process would happen, and they would just sit, and bodies would fall, and they exterminate people. And then he saw a life situation that was happening, and he realized, you know what? And it was his family. He came face to face actually with himself 30 years later or something like that. And but his way of handling that was to take himself out. And that
gave him the power. He had the power. That gave himself the power.
But the way he did it was, was not my favorite way of doing it. I just thought, where was this director, whoever wrote the story, where were they going with this? Because I do believe it.
The important thing is showing, I think, as showing and talking about these are the things, the cycles that occur. Sure. I got to interview the German director when I was in New York, and on the movie Sibling Love, and it was an unfortunate time frame where a young man had a gang rape, and came to find out it was his sister he had raped, and he shot everybody. And the director and the producer and the writer thought this was such an important topic, because so many young people are still dealing and have so much on their plate and not knowing how to what are the rights and wrongs, where is that gray area, and so sexually and morally and ethically, people were not having the dialogue. So he thought the movie was so important to bring dialogues to create change.
It's just so interesting that, for example, a situation like that so many people actually create these situations for people to go through trauma. It's just mind-boggling sometimes, the fact that
they had been separated somehow. So he didn't know this was his sister.
Oh, I see.
Him and his friends gang raped her, which was occurring tremendously in that country at that time. But it's something that, fast forward other countries, it happens here. Whether it's with, a lot of sexual exploitation, and a lot of people, that's the big thing. They'll say, well, you shouldn't talk about that. That's exploiting. No, we need to have these dialogues. If we can't talk about the hardships and the losses and the grief and tremendous grief that he, ended up killing everyone involved because he wasn't able to process, and that's what you were saying, that maybe some of these mass killings, if society would allow more open dialogue, so people aren't holding in anger, holding in grief, that we allow people to express, how they're feeling, instead of being ashamed of how you look or how you feel.
Well, not only that, but the system itself is kind of, it's not perfect. And so, you know, you have a lot of parents that will reach out if their child is struggling. And when you reach out with a child that's struggling, sometimes the doors are not always open, or it's expensive to get the counseling, or the child doesn't want to go to the counseling, and they do the best that they can, and then at some point, you know, maybe they think, oh, well, you know, they'll get better, or, you know, they're just going through this, just a phase. But young people nowadays have a lot more struggles, and they have a lot more going on, especially with social media. They have a lot more pressure on them. It's not just them and their friends dealing with the issue. It goes viral. It goes around their whole school, and it perpetuates. And that's a really heavy burden to carry around. So we have to really be aware of people struggling, young people especially in our society. Elderly people are struggling, and just be aware for those openings when you see someone struggling, because we're all trying to put on a brave face. Just, you know, kind of be open to the fact that there are people struggling, and maybe you can help them with just a kind word.
Maybe that would be a good avenue for you to go into. Have you thought of doing assemblies at school or something like that?
You know, I haven't. I don't even know. I'm a nanny. I'm actually a nanny now.
Okay.
And so I work with young children because they bring me so much joy.
Okay.
You have to find joy in life.
Absolutely.
You know, you really do. And if whatever your passion and your joy is, you really that's what you really need to focus on. And I found that being a nanny, I just started that a year ago, and I just love it. I enjoy it. They touch my heart in such a way, and they're just such precious little gifts to us. Animals and children.
You're still the nurturer.
I'm still the nurturer. I'm looking to be nurtured as well. I still need nurturing myself.
This is true.
And
we're all fragile.
a work in progress.
Yes, we
We're
are.
strong,
Definitely
we're
a work in
strong, but
progress.
we're fragile. The spirit can be fragile, right? But you're still surviving. That's wonderful. But
Absolutely.
the fact that you're still nurturing too is a healing force for you as
It
well.
is.
You
It
know?
absolutely is. It
And
makes you
that's
feel
why I
good.
thought this was so important to have this dialogue, to share how allowing each other to talk about our losses, our griefs, but yet in a way that we're moving forward.
Have to keep moving forward.
Absolutely. yeah.
Don't look back. Keep going forward.
Well, just know that some teen is watching you now,
I
and
hope
they're
so.
thinking about how you survived,
hope so.
and you are touching their lives in a positive way. That's a wonderful thing.
So I
Thank
want to
you.
thank all of you folks for being here.
Thank
and
you for
how can
inviting
we
me.
get a hold of you, Shirley? We got a few seconds left.
Oh, Post Polio and me. You can write to me at P.O. Box 22373, Honolulu 96823. Any of you who have concerns with post polio, we're hoping that to get a manual into every new physician's hands and into schools as well as doctors, SAGE and new.
And we'll be talking to you again, Teresa.
Thank
and
you.
they can get a hold of you through me.
Right, also, and if anybody needs a caring